Where exactly do we start with Berdly? I mean, he has so much less screen time, personality, and character than those we have already looked at. He's certainly no protagonist. Or is he? Maybe I just haven't been looking in the right places. Well, if I'm going to start at any point, that'd be a good time. Welcome viewers, I'm Vivet Veritas, and this is week 3 of Deltarune December, where I'm going through our big 4 lighteners and having a look at each of them in turn. This week we'll be looking at the funny gamer guy Berdly, seeing what kind of character liquids we can juice out of this little freak. He's someone who tends to fly under the radar when it comes to textual analysis, especially in the very busy section of chapter 2, but that doesn't mean there's nothing here to look at. Let's see what we can whip up for our Bluebird of Misfortune. Join me, won't you? Berdly is one of those characters who initially blends into the background, but that doesn't mean we don't know anything about him in chapter 1. Unfortunately, the things we do know about him aren't particularly elucidating. A lot like Chris's other classmates, we don't get a good look into his inner world and character. Instead, we see his main core personality traits, mostly the fact that he's a complete nerd and a teacher's pet. Taking one look at him, this shouldn't be a surprise. He's clearly meant to be this annoying suck-up that gets in the way, but isn't particularly harmful. Everyone knew one, in my youth it was me, and it's pretty basic for that reason in order to be more relatable. He's a little exaggerated, but you can tell that he doesn't mean any harm, even if he is arrogant, petulant, and single-minded. I'm going to go on a bit of a tangent, actually. Something I think is fun about Deltarune is that the Dark Worlds are not only a way to explore fiction, but also a way to explore characters. I think Berdly is the best example of this, but the same is also true for Chris, Susie, and Noelle. We as players, as well as likely Chris as a character, don't know much about these characters aside from their one-off personality traits. In the Dark Worlds though, we get to see them face lots of different trials and ideas that challenge them. Of course, this is, how a story works, but it's clear that in-universe, the Dark Worlds are bringing these people closer together and allowing them to know and understand each other further and further. This level of closeness is operationalized within the world of Deltarune itself as a product of the Dark Worlds, adding to their beneficial nature to the characters in a somewhat safe way for these people who, may I remind you, are withdrawn children who need a secure space for this kind of thing. We get to see actual character development and depth, each character being far more complex than we expect. Like how we use determination to explore the Dark Worlds, we also explore the internal worlds of these characters. It's a really fun comparison that I'm unsure is intentional, but it stands out a lot for Berdly. Berdly is, unsurprisingly, in a game written by Toby Fox, a lot deeper than just a nerd though. I mean, he is absolutely that too, but not just that. I want to talk about one of the more interesting parts of Berdly, the way he's made sympathetic in the narrative. See, the worst thing a fictional character can be to a lot of people is annoying. A lot of actions can be excused, and sometimes exploring immoral or unethical actions can be enjoyable and interesting in a fictional medium. I mean, let's look at how characters like Disney villains are loved to this day. Hell, even within Undertale, you can see the way someone like Alphys is treated by the community, not by me, baby, I love you, compared to, like, Flowey. It's the greatest sin a character can commit, so making your players actually feel bad for them is a difficult task indeed. Evidently though, it's one that Toby seems to be up for. Hopefully he doesn't overestimate his community's literacy skills. I've seen some shit. Anyway, Berdly, he sucks, and that's great. But for those who think that him sucking is annoying and a pain in the ass, Toby has a few tricks up his sleeve to get them on board. Despite his annoying nature and utter obliviousness, Berdly has depth to his reasonings. His backstory, one of covering up his own inadequacies with arrogance and feeling like he's only good thanks to Noelle, is something that's pretty understandable. As much as I hate to admit it, Berdly's backstory is the one that is the most relatable to me from when I was a kid. Kids who are learning who they are and processing big emotions have weird ways of dealing with it, and we've seen in Deltarune itself that there are much worse ways. Although this backstory doesn't exonerate him necessarily, it at least makes you stop and think about the preconceived notions of what and how a character might act. It makes you look at this weird little bird and think, well, he's incompetent, but that's kind of funny. I do think that his breakdown, for lack of a better word, is genuinely really good, accepting that he's not actually as good as he says he is. It's a very difficult thing to do, especially when you've built up this ego, regardless of whether or not anyone actually believes it. That adds some depth and sympathy to Mr. Bird, but you know what else can make you feel bad for a character? Well, something that separates Berdly from the other liners is that he fucking dies! Incredible. The fact that Berdly is the only one that stands against Chris is really interesting, but I'll get to that in a bit. What this especially represents is the cost of breaking the rules of the world. Berdly is seen as collateral. Like Noelle says in her Snowgrave Stupor, he's just another enemy to defeat for EXP. Ominous reminiscing of Undertale aside, Berdly's death demonstrates that when you're pushing the boundaries of a world, you lose touch with its inhabitants. It's meant to remind you that, hey, these characters are real in their own world and killing them is wrong. It's forcing you back into its internal world, whether you like it or not, making sure you can't disconnect yourself just to see what happens or to feel in control. Berdly is almost similar to Papyrus in this regard, where all of his annoying traits kind of fall to the wayside out of genuine concern, and you feel pity for him more than anything else. However, those who ran through it for the first time probably didn't think much of it. Lightners come back when they die and seem to just be able to return to the light world, so I'm sure Berdly will be fine. He's just frozen in the cyber world, no reason to believe that he'll... Oh shit. These aren't just dreams or fantasies. You kill Berdly and he stays dead, presumably. Everyone brushes it off, which makes sense, but really adds to the uncanniness of the whole Snowgrave route, reminding us that our choices do actually matter if we break it enough. That's probably enough to make us feel bad for Berdly, all things considered. Getting murdered will do that. Alright, topic change. These videos aren't long enough for my subheadings. Berdly's relationships, like every other character, are also pertinent to talk about. Oddly enough for a gamer, Berdly interacts with a lot of women. Susie, Noelle, and Queen are all important characters for his development and identity. Noelle is the only one we haven't talked about in the month's event, so let's quickly go over her. The relationship that Noelle and Berdly have is at the core of Berdly's character, and I've already mentioned how the incident between the two makes him sympathetic in an interesting way. Outside of that though, Noelle understands that Berdly is just a weird guy. Although people know she can do better, it's not about that for her. Berdly needs her around, much more than she does, because she helps him and makes him feel smart and correct, and feeling smart and correct is one of the most important things for Berdly. Deeper though, Berdly does care immensely for Noelle. All of this takes the form of weird, apparently not real romantic pursuits. It manifests as genuine care and worry in other situations. As much as a foolhardy, blustering moron as Berdly is, he's the only character who stands up to Chris and Snowgrave. All of his bravado is gone, and he just knows that something is deeply wrong about all of this. He doesn't want to hurt Noelle, or Chris for that matter, but he knows that he's currently the only one who can do anything, and he pays for that with his life. It's tragic, of course, but it also demonstrates the fact that Berdly has a deep desire, one often covered by arrogance or ignorance, to do the right thing. Susie, on the other hand, is much simpler. They're just very different. That's why Berdly completely dismisses her initially. She is absolutely not worth his time and has no hope whatsoever. Honestly, they're the exact type of person they dislike, one being orderly, loving authority, and smart, with the other being lazy, rebellious, and uninspired. They don't have much of a chance to interact pre-Chapter 2, but within it, Susie has no problem seeing Berdly as an antagonist. It's not until he joins their team where Berdly does one of the funniest 180s in the game. He goes from really disliking Susie for the aforementioned reasons to kind of being obsessed with her for the same reasons. It's incredible and such a surprise. I think the weird relationship they have is only just beginning. Queen is a bit of a different matter. He has complete deference to her to a point, evidently seeing her skill and strength. I doubt it's that simple, though, as the dialogue we do see between them suggests a relationship where Berdly feels acknowledged for his intelligence. He feels seen and validated, something that he so clearly craves. Unfortunately, pretty much anyone can see that he's just being strung along by Queen. Berdly's obliviousness is a major part of his character, a mix of arrogance to be unable to consider people not liking him, and lacking the intelligence to be not being able to notice the fact that he, well, isn't that intelligent. It's the Dunning-Kruger effect, but with a funny video game bird. Queen's relationship with him exemplifies this trait more than any others. Queen sees him as an easily manipulatable pawn and will repeatedly lie to him or just insult him outright. She's also very ready to replace or brainwash him and doesn't seem to harbour any real affection for him. In a way, it kind of makes you feel bad for Berdly, or at the very least demonstrates how being an arrogant pain in the ass means people don't want to be friends with you. Even then, Queen does, in her own way, help Berdly realise that it's okay for him to open up to people and the importance of being in a team, not just doing things by yourself or with people you know. Berdly is surprisingly complex when you get down to brass tacks. He's so tied up in what he wants to be and what he is that the lines between them begin to blur, and this comes at the price of not thinking about how he treats or interacts with others. Self-indulgent, ignorant and arrogant, Berdly works through his own flaws quite quickly after being shocked back into reality, and while he'll always be a bit of a nerd, he leaves chapter 2, assuming he survives, a better person for the small arc that he undergoes and with some people he can truly call friends. Berdly, after not surviving, paints an entirely different message, the cost of breaking the rules and how your choices can, as a matter of fact, matter to the lives of the people in this world, even if they don't change the ending itself. Berdly lets us see a place between unrepentantly evil and goofily harmless, and how to manage someone like that, a perspective that expands our understanding of the characters and world of Deltarune. That was a bit of a different one, wasn't it? Who knows I could talk that much about Berdly. Honestly, I probably could have done a bit more, but I think it'll come up in future videos. Plus, who knows, maybe we'll get some more juicy Berdly tidbits in the future chapters. Honestly, I doubt it. I think Toby might be done with this guy's character arc. Anyway, thanks for watching the penultimate Deltarune December episode. I hope what I've been saying has actually made sense or resonated with people, as I've been trying to get into the specifics of these characters while also not being redundant. Let me know how I've gotten on. Next week, well, I think you can probably figure out who the subject is for next week. Look forward to it. A tremendous thank you to my terrific patrons, Michael Bates, Maggie, Salgo, Tybee Fitzhugh, and Nigel Robinson for their constant support. Check out the Patreon, like and subscribe, etc. and so forth. Until next time, I've been Vivat Veritas, and I'll see you again soon.